Welcome to Self, Emotional Wellness for Men. My name is Courtney Brame. I'm the founder, executive director, podcast host, and yoga therapist in training here at this organization. We just had our Black Men's Emotional Wellness Symposium this past Saturday, November 30th, 2024. In case, 10 years from now, somebody listening, they're like, when was this? And the recordings are going to be available on the website, the same as the previous one from June 30th, 2024. And this one featured more of like an introduction into the concepts of the koshas in yoga. And the koshas are the five aspects of self, like the five sheaths is what it's called. That's what kosha means. And my approach to this was to engage deconstructing the high value man, right? So what it means to be high value, but through particular lenses. So we got these five aspects of self that are the physical body, the energy or breath body, the mind and emotional states, the true self is what we like to call it, like your accumulation of experiences, behaviors, beliefs, and that person that you are. And then we've got like our bliss body. This is who you are when you're in a place of joy and enjoying yourself and pleasure, pleasantries, and all of that stuff. So I had four conversations. This was sponsored by Black Men's Wellness in Portland, Oregon. Shout out to them. We had support from the Therapy Fund Foundation as well. They showed up and introduced their services and resources to support Black people, Black men as well. And this was a great conversation set it was a great set of conversations. The first one was with Dr. Rodrick Stewart, who talked to us about fitness. And this was more of us looking at the physical body, right? Like what we eat, what it turns into, how it plays out in the body. And he spoke a lot about blood pressure, talking about diabetes, and the importance of reading food labels. So when we look at and talk about what it means to be a high value man, we often think you need to go to the gym, you need to exercise, you need to look good. But what about how you feel? What about how your body functions, right? Why are we not discussing the importance of nutrition, the importance of the amount of food that you consume, the quality of the food? It's not something that's in that conversation. And if you're a high value man, you're someone who is educating yourself, you're informing yourself about your body, about how to be healthy, in addition to physically fit, if that's something that's important to you. But what we can all universally agree on is that we don't want this thing that accumulates over 20, 30 years of habits being the thing that takes us out, with whether it be a stroke, heart attack, the complications of diabetes, or complications that come from having hypertension as well. So this was the bulk of that conversation, along with just one thing you can do right now to start doing things differently, which is just reading food labels. I also talked to Ade, and I don't want to say the last name wrong, damn it, but he was we were talking about like spirituality, and this was to connect with that energy body and breathing, because he's a breathwork coach. And unfortunately we were interrupted, and it ate up about 20 to 25 minutes of the time that we had together, because someone infiltrated the Zoom room. This is on me because of being cheap. I didn't upgrade to the Zoom webinar because that's like $600-700 extra, and I ain't got that yet. So I wasn't selling tickets to the event. We had a couple of donors. Black Men's Wellness sponsored the event, so we were able to pay the speakers. That was squared away. We didn't really sell many tickets. A lot of people registered. I think that I sent the event out to less than 40 people, and maybe 3 or 4 donated. We had someone give $500. Shout out to her, because she was like, yo, this is important for men. This is important for y'all to be there. And then we had a couple of people donate $5 or $15, which was phenomenal because it offsets, maybe people don't quite know what it is. I'm not someone who talks about men's emotional wellness. I'm mostly known for talking about herpes, which is understandable, but I'm really adamant about making that shift to incorporating more of these conversations that really just aren't being had, and doing so with other men, regular everyday men that we otherwise may not have heard from. I think all of the guys except for Anthony and Mike had under 10,000 followers on social media, but they have a story. And I think that a lot of what we see, we place the validity of a person's life experience or their ability to do their job on how many people follow them. And that's another like subtle thing that I really wanted to address, but I just didn't make it to it. But with that day, we talked about spinning the block. Basically, he spun the block. He got married, and he and his wife consciously uncoupled. I love how he worded this and was telling his story. But then we had somebody infiltrate the Zoom room and do some BS. Same thing that happened with the last symposium, about the same amount of time in. And I've been trying to keep things free and accessible for everybody, but I think that price barrier is necessary in order for me to be able to facilitate the space in a way that is intentional, and everybody can be engaged and be present with what's happening. So moving forward, that's just what I'll have to do. Shout out to the Little Nest Fund for supporting the Men's Emotional Wellness Symposium plural, whatever that looks like, for supporting this. They gave us some money to be able to do more of these things, and I've wanted to like stretch it out because I really want to make an in-person event and use the funds for whatever upfront costs are necessary to do that, because I really see a lot of value in having some sort of just like a conference that is intentional for men, that doesn't center around the shit that we see on social media, y'all. So I'm working on that. I'm practicing getting that together. But Ade was robbed. He was absolutely robbed of our time together. So I need to make that right. So I'm going to have him be a guest on the podcast as well, so that we can go into that. The breathwork work that he does, and talk more about that conscious uncoupling, man, and what that meant, what doing the work looks like, because so much of the black man's breath, if we are able to breathe, we're able to be in tune with our bodies. If we're in tune with our bodies, we're in tune with our values. And when we're in tune with our values, we make conscious decisions. And when we have more consciousness as black men especially, boy, we're gonna fuck some shit up. And when we have more consciousness as men who are able to come together and have shared visions, because even if our like values and experiences aren't the same, there's always a way that they can play in with one another in order to accomplish a bigger picture goal. Next we had Anthony. So I spoke to Anthony. We were supposed to talk about leadership, black male leadership, and he and I talked, and he mentioned he felt like maybe he wasn't really organized, but I think that my intention with having him on was to in fact like ruffle feathers, which he definitely did, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But the big takeaway there was the importance of this kind of space, right? I got the sense that Anthony, this is something that he feels very passionate and strongly about, and there are a lot of obstacles. There's a lot of inconsistencies with people's behaviors and beliefs, and a lot of sort of like cultish brainwashing out there that keeps people from independently thinking on their own. So that showed me the importance of a space like this, where a black man or a man is able to depressurize, decompress the excess like pressure that has built up over however much time of the experiences that they've had, that they've not been allowed to talk about, or not been able to talk about, or maybe haven't felt safe to be able to speak to. And so it's important to me that this kind of space exists, because I think it's important to men that this kind of space exists, and for the greater good of the population, regardless of what you identify as. But if we're looking at men and women, like, everybody needs men. I don't care what anybody says, right? Like, we need men, and we need men who are conscious. We need men who are intentional. We need men who are who have integrity, who are going to also check the men who are giving men a bad name. And accountability is probably one of the core things that we talk about with leadership and the importance of that, but not accountability in the sense that we're living to the standards of people who aren't men, but to have the standards of this greater good that men are supposed to be representative of and supposed to uphold. And we don't see much of that on the internet. We see more people who aren't men dictating what the standards are for what makes a man, and a lot of us are not going to be able to match that by definition, but every one of us can live with integrity. And I think that was a point that got missed in our conversation because Anthony needed to say some things that came out, even if they were off of the point or adjacent to the point, and that he needed that. People needed to witness that this is a thing that is happening for black men. And for myself, I tried to reel it back into leadership because what I think is most prevalent is the absence of leadership, creating like clusters of issues. And I will use abortion as an example, right? Men feeling like, oh, that's a women's issue because women are leading and dictating that abortion is, their issue. Like, it's ours. Y'all need to stay out of this conversation. But then we have elections and men are not listening or hearing or being able to be heard about such a topic, because if you keep telling us, like, if we're being punished for inquiring or trying to help or even just disagreeing and trying to understand, right? Like, that's like touching a hot stove. Why would I keep touching the stove if it's hot and I'm going to keep burning my hand? So there's also that kind of buildup. And we look at the kind of leadership that's leading those conversations where men are unable to contribute or support. Now we've got, a little bit less than half of the population that's like, all right, well, that's not my issue. That can't be my issue. That's a women's thing. So my priorities are elsewhere. And we're not able to engage, right? And the way that things were said and the way that they were received are often, different, because Anthony's interpretation of the world, Courtney's interpretation of the world, the audience's interpretation of the world, these are all different. And it speaks to the importance of men's spaces where men can come in, say what they got to say. We know what they're saying, and then we can like reel it back. Like, all right, cool. So here's what I'm really hearing. Now you want to make this thing happen. Now, how can we hold accountable to that? Knowing that if you say things this way, this might not get you the reaction or the results that you want, right? So it really, I think Anthony's conversation really validated for me, because I was going to cancel it. Like, I was going to cancel it. I was seeing how few people registered. I was questioning, like, I don't have this conversation. I had something planned for an event in Brooklyn and nobody registered for that. And this was about like men's vulnerability. And I was just really discouraged. But it was in this like moment of feeling the triggering of what was happening in the audience, my own discomfort, some of the things that were said and how they were said, that really showed me, okay, it is imperative that I do this. I might not have gotten it right this time, but I'm going to continue to get better at it. The more we do a thing, the better we get at it. And if I want to cultivate my own leadership, there are things that I have to do and look in myself for. Like, I'm seen as a leader in the herpes stigma world, and that's cool. But I don't think that we're going to change the world through herpes. I think that we're going to change the world through men. Like, men are the ones who are giving herpes to all of the women that I'm speaking to. I don't know a woman who's gotten herpes from a woman, and a majority of the men who've gotten herpes have gotten it from a woman who got it from a man. And a lot of us are, in fact, missing that leadership. So this is something that I absolutely have to revisit, and I have to keep doing this. So I'm gonna do it in my way, and it's important to me that I do it more than it's important that I do it well or do it right. All right, so I think that it's just important for me to name that. And me and Mike, oh my God, I really, really, really wish that I was able to be present for me and Mike's conversation. The chat was blowing up, and I tried to transition. Like, I know Anthony spoke to some hot topics and people would want to engage and debate, and I asked that they like do that with him. I don't think that I was explicit enough in doing that privately, because the Zoom chat was going nuts while I'm trying to conduct this final interview conversation with Mike. And I reached out and I apologized to him, and he was distracted as well, so that makes sense. But we did get to a couple of really good points about how, like, as men, as black men, us having self-care is seen as selfish, right? And this speaks to the value of men. Like, people really do rely on us not to take care of ourselves, regardless if they say you need to take care of yourself. Because if I go take care of myself, that means that I now create my absence from you, even if it means I can be more present because I've done that. Like, there's this conflict, and I really wanted to get to how we can, not be so conflicted between I have to take care of myself and I have to take care of these other people. And I didn't want to, go into the chat and be like, hey, y'all, I need y'all to chill out. Like, but it was just a tricky situation. I thought that I was able to be present, but in looking back and hearing how the conversation went, I don't think that I was present for that conversation and that interview, and I was very distracted. So Mike's gonna have me on his podcast, and I'm gonna try and bring him onto mine, so that when I guess I got to do interviews. This ain't gonna just be me talking. There's gonna be some interviews in this thing. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to more of these symposiums. I'm looking forward to more conversations. But as far as like the chat goes, I recognize that I can do a better job of being intentional about this being a intentional space. This is an intentional space. This isn't a safe space. And I probably need to verbalize what that means more whenever I'm hosting things like this. This is like the locker room. And in the locker room, people call it all these things, toxic and everything, but this is where accountability is. When someone says something that's out of line, we want to know, all right, well, what do you mean? Because no one's asking. We're taking what people are saying at face value, and we're not interrogating it. We're not challenging each other. We're not debating one another. We're not creating understanding. Motherfuckers going to the internet, into their echo chamber, and talking into the void when something happens, and they just want to go and vent or ramble, whatever, and then that's that. So yeah, the Black Men's Emotional Wellness Symposium taught me that this is a very important thing. I am really working on being more intentional with my time, especially because now what I'm seeing is that with something positive for positive people, with self, with my yoga therapy, I'm doing a lot, and my part-time job. Like, I'm doing a lot of things, and I'm wanting to move, and I'm working to begin the process of building and creating and maintaining a family. So with all of this happening, it's very important that I'm intentional with the time that we have. So I'm looking to continue this podcast, highlight and promote symposia where I'm having conversations with your everyday man, on a platform where we can have discussion. I want to be able to talk for 40 minutes to give people understanding, and then for maybe the last 15-20 minutes be able to have people engage in discussions and debate as necessary. So this has really helped me with refining things. I thank you. Special thanks to everyone who supported, who attended, who's going to watch the video, who listened to this podcast. I appreciate y'all very much. I cannot wait for the next one. I will be giving y'all updates. If you haven't already, subscribe to the newsletter for Self at getself.org. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this. And if you're a man, or you know a man who isn't just in need of some type of peer support, I'm incorporating my yoga therapy training into peer support calls. So I'm happy to have just a 30-minute call if somebody needs to vent, you got a situation you need guidance on. I'm happy to do that. And I also offer yoga therapy for men. And what this looks like is bringing a yoga informed approach, taking the science of yoga to address any issues, concerns that a person might have, identifying where their imbalances are, where their struggles are, so that we can restore balance in that person's life holistically. All right, I'm Courtney Brain. This is Self. You can visit the website getself.org, and if you feel compelled to, please make a donation to help us with not having any intrusion in our Zoom events, and make some of these things happen in person, y'all. All right, till next time. Thank you.